Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Harris County Public Library tonight. We are honored to be hosting Taiko Project for this performance of Big Rhythm, Big Drums as part of our Asian American Pacific Islander Month program series. Taiko Project is based out of Los Angeles and is a touring group with young audiences of Houston. They will be available to visit the Houston area in spring of 2022, so please stay tuned for more great programs with them. Tonight's program will consist of a fabulous drumming performance that weaves modern and traditional Japanese taiko together to present a diverse repertoire of show-stopping songs, followed by a live Q&A with me and Brian Yamami, the ensemble leader for Taiko Project. Be sure to put up all your questions in the chat, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, as you think of them, and we will answer as many as we can right after the program. Before we start the show, I'd like to remind everyone to please tune in live tomorrow at 7 p.m. as we present Motown and More, a virtual live concert by the SVK Band, performed live from our very Freeman Library in celebration of the Harris County Public Library's centennial celebration this year. You can learn more about this program and all of our other exciting programs by visiting hcpl.net/virtual programs. And with that, please enjoy Big Rhythm, Big Drums.
Hi everyone, we are the Taiko Project, and that first song that we play for you is called Matsuri Taiko. Matsuri in Japanese means festival, and taiko is the form of music that we play, and comes from the country of Japan. The word taiko just means big drum, and they're pretty big drums, huh? While the exact origins of taiko are uncertain, it's known that there are traces of influence from China, Korea, and India. So while today it is most associated with the island nation of Japan, it also has roots in many other countries on the Asian continent. Now, drums at your local museum. Each drum is unique and takes several days, sometimes even months or years to be made. The barrel of the body is made out of wood, usually from a tree that grows in Japan, similar to an elm tree called keaki in Japanese. A large tree is cut into sections to make the cylinder shape that you see on the outside of our drums. Once they're cut, then a hole is drilled in the middle of the piece of wood. Next, a saw goes in and cuts out a large section of wood. Once that section is removed, rather than simply wasting the wood by throwing it away, drum makers will often make smaller taiko drums. After we have the barrel of the drum in the shape that we need, we then must put what is called a skin on it. The skin is the part of the drum that we strike to make the big, booming sound. These skins are made from cowhide. The skin is soaked overnight in water until it becomes soft and stretchable. Once it's ready, it is then stretched over the open ends of the barrel and either tacked in or a rope is stretched across the head of the barrel, as you see on this drum. As the skin dries, it contracts or gets smaller, and the drum is ready to be played. Now, the drum is one of the oldest forms of human communication. Before there were smartphones or email or texting, there was the drum. In Japan, a taiko drum would be placed in the center of a village, and a pattern could be played to bring the community together. It was also used by farmers who thought the drums sounded like thunder. They would play the drums in hopes that it would bring rain, which would in turn help their crops and ensure them a bountiful harvest. The drum that you've been hearing is called a chudaiko, which means middle drum in Japanese. With our main taiko drums, you'll see that we have different bachi, or drumsticks, that we use with them. The larger drums will use larger, thicker bachi. The smaller drums have smaller, thinner bachi. Another taiko drum that we have here is called the shime taiko, which means tightened drum in Japanese. This will use a smaller set of bachi than the middle drum did. In many other musical traditions, the music is notated or written so that everyone reads it off of a page. However, taiko music is part of an oral tradition, meaning that everything is communicated verbally and passed down from generation to generation. Kuchishoga is a percussive language that we use to communicate our rhythms. For example, if the drum is struck in the center, we call that don. And if the stick strikes the rim of the drum, we call that kara. Using these two sounds, let's create some patterns and see if Yumi had her coffee today. Try playing don kara 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 ka don don. Not bad. How about kara don kara doko don don? Now how about doro kara don don doro kara don don doro kara don don doro kara don don doro kara doro kara doro kara doro kara doro kara don 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 kara ka ka. Good job. Thank you, Yumi. Now these drums take a lot of energy to play, and sometimes we can start to get a bit tired and need a little pick-me-up. This is where another unique element of our music comes into play. It's called ki. This is another way that we can use our voice. You've probably heard something similar if you've ever taken martial arts such as judo. These shouts of encouragement help us to keep playing strong. Like this. The first piece that we played was a way for us to warm up the room and get things started. It's also a more straightforward, traditional festival piece with the main taiko drums that we mentioned. This next piece is called omiyage. Omiyage means gift and incorporates synchronized and organized movement. Watch for how we play the drum with movement while at the same time creating a visual picture. Organized movement is called choreography and is one of the key elements of taiko that make it unique from other types of music performances. This is omiyage.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other instruments we use besides our taiko drums. This you saw and heard in the first piece, and it is not a percussion instrument. This is a seashell, and this comes from one of the world's largest sea snails, the Pacific triton. It washes up on the beach. We trim off the end and attach a mouthpiece. In Japanese, we call it a horagai. This instrument uses air to produce the sound, and instruments that uses breath to produce the sound are called wind instruments, and they are in a different musical family than our taiko drums, which are in the percussion family. I buzz my lips like a trumpet player would do, and the air travels through and amplifies the sound. Watch and listen. The other wind instrument that we use is the shinobue. This is a flute made out of a plant called bamboo. Bamboo grows in vertical sticks, and we cut it down. We drill 7 holes here where my fingers open and close to change the pitch higher or lower. And there is one blowhole that I blow air across. Watch and listen as I change the position of my fingers to change the pitch, and the path of the air goes across the blowhole. We also have unique metal percussion instruments. The first one here is the atarigane. It is a small circular brass gong that is used with a mallet to produce different sounds hitting different areas of the atarigane. Watch and listen. The next metal instrument that we use is the chapa. These are small brass cymbals, and they are different in that they are much smaller than the ones you would see in orchestras or bands. Because they're smaller, we're able to get a lot of different sounds like this. A special quality that all of these instruments share is that they are not stationary the way that our large taiko drums are. We can move around the stage while we play them, which allows for even more movement when we perform. This next song is called Here We Go Now, which features the shinobue, the chapa, and okero drums. These drums are carried with shoulder straps, and the okero drummers will be able to take advantage of their portability by using lots of choreographed movement during the piece. See if you can hear the musical conversation between the drummers at the end of the song. This is Here We Go Now.
Did you hear their conversation? Now, in Japan, about every day you can find a street festival. In fact, the first piece that we played for you today has rhythms and movements that come from one of the most common festivals called Obon. Obon is a celebration of our ancestor and takes place in the summer and is usually several Obons right here in Southern California, if you'd like to experience it for yourself in person. And often at these Obon festivals, you will find people wearing Japanese festival attire similar to what we are wearing today. The tops that we're wearing are called haragake and usually comes in several different styles or colors. The ones that we are wearing are black with embroidery designs. The pants that we are wearing are called hakama pants. Ours is a more modern version and it's usually worn for special occasions. On our wrists we have taiko. These are wristbands that usually help keep our wrists warm and flexible and keeps sweat from getting onto our hands. And on our feet we wear tabi. Usually in Japan it's worn with socks that are split toe because they're usually worn with zori or geta, which are like flip-flops. Our tabi are outdoor type and have a rubber sole, which are also worn by farmers or gardeners to give them more flexibility and a better grip. We wear tabi when we play taiko because it gives us a greater connection to the ground while playing. And though this art form started in Japan and still has many connections to Japanese culture, you don't have to be Japanese to play taiko. In fact, our group is made up mostly of Asian Americans, which means our parents, our grandparents, or even our great-grandparents immigrated to the United States. And you may also notice that there are both men and women in our group. Traditionally, taiko used to just be played by men, but today you will find both men and women playing. In fact, in the United States, there are more women playing taiko than there are men. And one of my favorite things about our group is that because we grew up listening to music here in the United States, we have incorporated American music and dance into our songs. The next song you're going to see is called Expanding. And in this song, listen for rhythms and watch for movement that feels a little less traditional and incorporates these modern American influences. Please enjoy Expanding.
Like we mentioned, anyone can play taiko. We're all going to learn a taiko pattern called an oroshi. First, we start by saying ichi, ni, sore, which means 1, 2, ready, go in Japanese. And then we start by striking our laps, very slow. Gradually getting faster and faster until we're going as fast as we can. And we end with one final strike with both hands. All right, here we go. Ichi, ni, sore. Good job, everyone. See, anyone can try taiko, and we hope we've inspired you to try it. We've had a lot of fun sharing our music with you, and we have one last song for you called Illustrate Flying. Thank you.
Well, that was amazing. I quite enjoyed that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stream the ensemble leader of the Taiko project, Brian Yamami. And also, everyone who is listening, please, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, type any questions that you might have in the chat, and we will try to answer as many as we can during the stream tonight. Anyway, hi, Brian.
Hello.
How's it going? Like I said, that was a phenomenal video and performance. I think I've become a fan of Taiko for life after that.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
While we're waiting for some questions, I had some. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Taiko project got started? Maybe a little about your history with Taiko?
Sure. Well, the form that you're seeing, this is called kumidaiko, or group drumming, started about 50 years ago in the United States. It's only predated in Japan by about 10 or 15 years. Of course, the drum itself is hundreds of years old, but in this kind of modern performing arts context, it's really only about 50 years old in the US. And there was a first generation of Taiko groups that came around in the 1960s, 1970s. And as they started becoming of the age to have kids. So they started in the 80s having youth groups. And I was fortunate enough to live in San Jose, where there was a youth troupe that was being started. And so my parents threw me into classes. And then around the late 90s is where a lot of us that started as kids started coming of age, becoming old enough to try doing Taiko as a career. And one of my mentors just kind of told me, hey, why don't you get a bunch of your friends around together and do something different? And that's really the sole idea that Taiko project started with, to kind of put our stamp on it, to take the art form and incorporate our experience into it. And so I gathered a bunch of my fellow kind of younger Taiko players together, and we started trying to do a lot of experimental and new ideas while still trying to maintain a lot of the traditional styles that we grew up with and that we love, and create that into kind of the modern / traditional blend of Taiko that you see today.
So y'all write your own, I assume that there's canonical Taiko performances, but you're bringing your own spin on it, and you would call you guys the authors of the music that you're making in this way, right? Yeah,
some of the majority of our repertoire is original music, composed mostly by our artistic director, Maz, who you saw in the kind of demonstration. And the other half, I would say, is kind of more traditional, but not traditional in the idea that it's hundreds and thousands of years old, but more traditional that it's been played that way for decades. So there are forms, there's regional forms of Taiko styles, and there's also more contemporary styles that have been around so long and that have been propagated by so many different Taiko groups that they've kind of become a traditional style that's familiar to audiences.
How loud does it get in your? It sounded loud in the video. I'm just wondering, do y'all have earplugs or during your? I mean, it was amazing. I'm just curious about the decibel level.
Yeah, it's pretty high. Usually when we play in theaters, sometimes they'll have a box of earplugs saying, "You make this for the show." But most people don't wear earplugs. I think the acoustics of theaters, make it so that it's not. It's maybe a high decibel, but it's also a very low frequency.
Right.
So except for the small metallic instruments, it's not really piercing to the ear. If anything, you really feel the sound and the vibration of the drums, especially when we're using some of our larger drums. So that's something I think people enjoy about the performances, that you're not just watching music, but you can really feel the music shake you.
Yeah, no, that I um just yeah, low frequency music. I love, and I would love to go see. Is there any organizations in Houston that do taiko drumming that people can come see or even join and become a part of if they're interested in it?
Yeah, there's a group called Kaminari Taiko of Houston, and they've been around for at least a couple of decades, doing a lot of really great work in the community, playing probably hundreds of performances over their time in Houston. They teach classes as well. I think they're probably like us, just kind of coming out of the pandemic and starting to redevelop or rethink how they're going to teach classes. Yeah, if you just search for Kaminari Taiko Houston, you'll find them. There's also a Kaminari Taiko in Las Vegas. Kaminari means thunder, and so it's kind of a common phenomenon associated with taiko. So, but yeah, check them out. They're a great group.
That I will definitely check them out. I don't see any questions from the audience yet. Thankfully, I have still a lot. Do you have any like recommendations for like, are there canonical albums or performances that you can access if you watch this video and found the genre really interesting and want to listen to more of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my the go-to professional taiko group in the world is Kodo. Easy to search for, Kodo, and Taiko. They've been playing for I think 40 years now. They're just celebrating their 40th anniversary, but they have set the bar for taiko performance, and yeah, they're doing a really cool video series where they're playing out in a lot of natural spaces in Japan and doing kind of like these it's like a music video / taiko / planet Earth combination. So they're really nicely done. And yeah, they have at least a dozen albums, if not more. So yeah, they're the gold standard.
Kodo, I will definitely check that out. I wanted to learn a little bit about the writing process for this music. You talked about how it's like an oral tradition. It's not written scores, but you have long songs. How does the rehearsal come together, and it reminds me of like dance. I mean, you talked about how there's a lot of dancing involved, and there's a connection between movement and the music. How does like a rehearsal work for you guys?
Well, right now, there's usually a combination of learning new music, practicing our current repertoire. So when we're practicing our regular repertoire, we'll just kind of set up and run through a song. If there's any places where we need to clarify or that aren't being executed well, we'll kind of take some time, maybe slow it down a little bit, and just kind of repeat those sections until they're able to be executed well. When we're developing new work, usually one of our composers in the group will come in and actually each one has been completely different. So it's hard to say, but one situation would be a composer comes in with an idea of everything, every single part for every single drum, and what it's supposed to sound like. That's usually kind of rare. A lot of times we'll kind of develop a song organically. Someone will come in with an idea, add on ideas as they kind of hear one part, add in a second part, kind of see how it feels, and just kind of add on from there. Sometimes other members will say, oh, you know what if we added this instrument in, and just kind of give it some different color. And it kind of just builds like that from there. A lot of our songs are in constant states of, I guess, experimentation. And we're always kind of tooling around with them, trying to figure out ways of making them more interesting or playing around with them.
We have a question from Facebook. We sort of answered it, but where can we see your group perform in person?
In person,
I know it's a pandemic still, but
yeah,
what-
well,
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, we are actually, a lot of our tour dates for this year and last fall have been pushed to next year. So we're gearing up and kind of getting busy for the coming season. For us, we'll be doing some touring through the Midwest to Illinois and Nebraska in the fall, in September. We have a tour set up for next year that will take us to Northern California, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. But in terms of Texas, what we're trying to do, we joined the young audience of Houston roster this year, and so we're trying to figure out where we can in our calendar for 2022 to make it out to Houston to perform for schools and play for kids, which is what we love to do. So right now we're looking at possibly sometime in the spring of next year to actually be in Houston at some schools and maybe libraries to perform through the young audiences of Houston.
Please come to our libraries. I mean, I can't do the planning, but I want y'all to come. Please.
We'd love to be there.
I think that's all the time that we have for tonight. I want to thank you again, Brian, for showing us your amazing art form. And thank you all at home for tuning in tonight. And again, remember to check out all of our programs at hcpl.net/virtual programs. A big thank you to the young audiences and Taiko Project for the opportunity to host this wonderful program. And we hope to see you all tomorrow at 7 o'clock for the Motown and more. Thank you again, Brian, so much. I really appreciated talking to you.
Likewise.
And we'll see you guys on the internet. Good night.